Arav Malhotra sat in his expansive study on the top floor of their Austin mansion, the late afternoon sunlight glinting off the glass walls that framed the sprawling cityscape. To the outside world, he was the epitome of success, a self-made billionaire contractor whose construction empire spanned the southern United States. His reputation was impeccable, deals were made with firm handshakes, and blueprints turned into towering edifices under his exacting standards. Yet in the quiet of his office, Arav felt the first faint tremors of unease ripple through his carefully curated world. From the moment he had married Anaya 3 years ago, people had admired them as a power couple, elegant, ambitious, and perfectly in sync. Yet lately, Arav had begun noticing subtle discrepancies. Dinner conversations had grown curt, punctuated by awkward silences. Anaya's smiles sometimes felt rehearsed, her compliments slightly hollow. He had always known her as confident, intelligent, and resourceful, but recently her charm seemed to mask a calculated distance he couldn't quite pinpoint. Arav leaned back in his chair, swirling a glass of aged whiskey. The empire he had built was thriving beyond imagination. Luxury apartments, commercial complexes, and cutting-edge infrastructure projects dotted his portfolio. Yet the more he immersed himself in contracts and board meetings, the more he realized he was seeing less of his wife, despite living under the same roof. Anaya had taken up projects that kept her away for hours, claiming personal growth seminars or charitable engagements, but her excuses no longer held the effortless believability they once did. He glanced at the framed photographs lining the shelves, images of smiles at charity galas, award ceremonies, and exotic vacations. In every picture, Anaya's eyes held a glint he couldn't fully read, sometimes warmth, sometimes calculation. Arav rubbed his temple, sensing a growing unease. Something was off, something that didn't belong in a life meticulously ordered down to the last cent. The mansion itself seemed to echo the tension he couldn't yet name. The security team reported everything as normal, yet Arav couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on him, even when alone. He had hired a private investigator years ago for minor corporate espionage, but now the thought of someone following him at home wasn't far-fetched. He remembered a night not long ago, a faint shadow near the main gate, easily dismissed as a passerby, but it lingered in his mind like a warning. His attention shifted to the personal side of the empire, the accounts, the investments, the hidden channels through which money flowed. Arav had always prided himself on financial transparency, but today, while reviewing statements, a small, unusual envelope caught his eye. It wasn't among the usual piles of business invoices or tax documents. The envelope was thick, embossed with an unfamiliar seal and addressed to Anaya. His brow furrowed. Why had this never come across his desk before? Why had no one mentioned it? Hands slightly trembling, he opened it. Inside was a detailed bank statement, a series of transactions that didn't align with their joint finances. Withdrawals, transfers to accounts he had never heard of, some so large they made him blink in disbelief. Each line seemed to pulse with hidden intent. His mind raced. Was this normal investment strategy, or was something far darker lurking behind the numbers? He set the statement on his polished mahogany desk, staring at it as if it could speak. The silence of the office pressed in on him, heavy and suffocating. The city skyline no longer comforting, but intimidating. A sense of vulnerability he hadn't felt in years crept into him. Arav realized that his golden life, so polished, so enviable, was suddenly cast in shadows he couldn't yet illuminate. From the corner of the room, the hum of the security system seemed louder, more ominous. The perfectly ordered mansion suddenly felt labyrinthine, filled with secrets. Arav's pulse quickened. He leaned forward, fingers hovering over the envelope, knowing that whatever lay within these pages could change everything he thought he knew about his wife, and perhaps about himself. Arav felt a chill as he noticed one particular account, an enormous transfer that went straight to a mysterious offshore entity under Anaya's name. His stomach sank. The golden life he had built now felt fragile, and the first threads of betrayal were beginning to unravel. Arav Malhotra couldn't shake the unease that had settled over him since discovering the mysterious bank statement. The mansion, once a sanctuary of success and luxury, now felt like a stage for secrets he wasn't invited to witness. Days passed, and Anaya's behavior grew more enigmatic. She left the house for hours on end, citing vague appointments, charity meetings, or visits with distant friends. Yet, her explanations were always delivered with a subtle tension, a hesitation in her voice that Arav had never heard before. He tried to confront her gently during dinner one evening, his hand resting on the polished oak table. "Anaya, is everything all right? You've been disappearing for hours lately." Anaya paused, her lips curling into a practiced smile. "Arav, you worry too much. You have enough on your plate running the business. Don't read too much into it." Her words were calm, almost soothing, but her eyes betrayed something else, something calculated, something distant. Arav had learned to read the subtlest cues in people, a skill honed in boardrooms and negotiations, and he felt a chill as he realized he could no longer rate his own wife. The unease grew unbearable one night when Arav, restless and uneasy, wandered into the mansion's security room. He had barely glanced at the monitors before noticing a timeline anomaly. The cameras had captured Anaya entering the library late at night, but the footage after 11 p.m. was missing. Curious, he accessed the raw video logs only to find the impossible. Someone, Anaya herself, had deleted hours of footage from the system. Arav's heart pounded. Deleting video logs required high-level clearance. And the thought of Anna, his wife, the woman he had trusted implicitly, manipulating the mansion's security with such precision, filled him with disbelief. He replayed the footage frame by frame, searching for some logical explanation. But there was none. Her movements were fluid, deliberate, and terrifyingly confident. The mansion seemed suddenly smaller, the hallways longer, shadows creeping where none had been before. Arav's mind raced through possibilities, business secrets, a hidden lover, or something even darker. He had always considered Anaya to be elegant, intelligent, and fiercely loyal. Yet now he was forced to acknowledge a gnawing suspicion. He did not know her at all. That night, he reviewed the remaining footage in meticulous detail. Then, at exactly 2 a.m., a new figure appeared, standing silently at the main gate. The man was tall, dressed in dark clothing, his face partially obscured by the brim of a hat. He did not move for several minutes, simply lingering as if waiting for someone. Arav froze, recognizing none of his employees, friends, or neighbors. The presence of an unknown man at this hour, in the protective perimeter of his estate, made his stomach twist with dread. The camera captured Anaya leaving the house shortly before the man's appearance. His pulse quickened. Could she be meeting him? Was this connected to the bank statement, the disappearing footage, or something else entirely? Arav felt the walls of his mansion closing in, the safe luxury that had always given him control now replaced by a suffocating uncertainty. He leaned closer to the screen, adjusting the playback, desperate to identify the man. There was something chilling about his stillness, the deliberate patience in his posture. Arav realized that this was no random visitor. Someone was waiting for instructions, and possibly, someone was orchestrating events from within his own home. As the night deepened, the city outside shimmered with its usual calm, indifferent to the storm brewing inside Arav's life. He finally stepped back from the monitor, rubbing his temples. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. The golden life he had built felt fragile. Each carefully constructed brick of his empire suddenly exposed to forces he couldn't comprehend. Arav's eyes widened as he zoomed in on the footage. There was a small envelope clutched in the man's hand. It looked eerily familiar, almost identical to the mysterious bank statement he had discovered on his desk days ago. The mansion was eerily silent the morning after the footage incident. Arav Malhotra's absence from his usual early calls and meetings immediately set off alarms among his staff. By mid-morning, his personal assistant, Ravi, had forced open the study door and stumbled back in shock. Arav was slumped over his mahogany desk, a pool of blood spreading across the polished surface beneath him. A sleek letter opener protruded grotesquely from his chest. The initial reaction of the responding officers was cautious. "It looks like a suicide," one remarked grimly, noting the lack of immediate struggle. The scene was unnervingly clean, Arav's personal effects untouched, his laptop open with spreadsheets still active and a half-full glass of whiskey nearby. Yet something about the arrangement felt staged, almost clinical in its precision. Detective Leela Thompson was first on the scene. She had seen her share of high-profile cases, but even she was struck by the unsettling calm of the study. The city skyline, visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows, gleamed innocently, hiding the darkness that had unfolded within these walls. Leela crouched to examine the area around the body. Subtle signs of disturbance on the floor suggested a scuffle, easily overlooked if one wasn't looking for minutiae. The forensic team began their meticulous work. Fingerprints on the letter opener were smudged beyond recognition. Blood spatter patterns hinted that Arav had been attacked from the side rather than taking his own life. Forensic inconsistencies quickly cast doubt on the initial assessment of suicide. The safe in the corner, which should have contained sensitive documents and bank statements, had been wiped clean. The team noted it in their report. Someone had deliberately erased evidence crucial to the investigation. Meanwhile, neighbors were interviewed. A few reported seeing a shadowy figure lingering near the mansion late at night, consistent with the footage Arav had discovered days prior. Surveillance cameras from nearby streets showed a dark sedan parked inconspicuously, only moving hours after the estimated time of death. It was clear this was not a random crime. This had been orchestrated with precision. Detective Thompson examined Arav's laptop and began cross-referencing financial records with the mysterious bank statement he had discovered. Transfers to offshore accounts, previously unnoticed, hinted at serious financial irregularities. But the larger concern was Anaya. Where was she during the night Arav died? Her phone records immediately became the next focal point. By mid-afternoon, a grim realization hit the team. Anaya's phone logs revealed dozens of calls to a number matching the unknown man captured on the security footage. The calls spanned several weeks, most occurring during odd hours, late at night, and precisely during the windows when she claimed to be attending charity events or seminars. There were encrypted messages and emails tied to these calls, suggesting coordination, secrecy, and a premeditated plan. The investigators also discovered that she had accessed the mansion's security system remotely multiple times during those nights, deleting surveillance footage and covering tracks. This, combined with the newly found communications, painted a picture of deliberate manipulation. Someone inside the household working to control what could be seen and what could remain hidden. Detective Thompson felt the magnitude of betrayal slowly crystallizing. Arav had trusted Anaya implicitly, sharing not just a life but an empire he had spent decades building. Now every indicator suggested that the woman he loved, or thought he loved, might have been complicit in his demise. The emotional weight of the discovery was heavy, but the case demanded objectivity. Leela knew the next step would require digital forensics, a careful unspooling of every message, call, and deleted file. Forensic analysts pulled phone backups and decrypted files late into the night. The trail was unmistakable. Anaya had been in constant contact with the man from the footage, coordinating events that coincided perfectly with Arav's final movements. Every call, every deletion, every cryptic message pointed to a collaboration that went far beyond a mere affair. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the mansion, Detective Thompson stood in the study where Arav had fallen. The air seemed heavier, charged with secrets yet to be uncovered. One fact was undeniable. This was not a simple case of money, power, or passion. It was a deliberate orchestration, and Anaya was at the center of it all. The forensic team compiled a timeline linking Anaya's phone activity directly to the night of Arav's death. The unknown man was no longer a vague shadow. He was a key player in the meticulously planned murder, and every message, every call, confirmed the horrifying truth. The woman Arav had trusted had been communicating with his killer. Detective Leela Thompson leaned over the laptop in the mansion's makeshift investigation hub, her eyes scanning line after line of digital breadcrumbs. Arav's death had already shattered the illusion of perfection in the Malhotra household, but the deeper they dug, the more disturbing the layers became. Encrypted messages, deleted call logs, and covert financial transfers suggested a web of deception that extended far beyond a simple affair. The breakthrough came when the forensic team decrypted a set of files recovered from Anaya's cloud backups. Hidden within were messages to and from a former employee, Leo Hart. He had once managed accounts for Arav's contracting empire, but was terminated for embezzlement nearly 2 years prior. Leo's dismissal had been quiet, an attempt by Arav to avoid scandal, but now it was clear the former employee had never truly disappeared from their lives. The messages were direct, intimate, and unnervingly meticulous. Leela scrolled through the recovered emails and texts. There were references to plans, timing, and execution, along with meeting coordinates that coincided with times Anaya claimed to be elsewhere. Hotel bookings under aliases surfaced, confirming night stays in motels scattered across the city, all aligning with periods Arav had been working late at the office or traveling for inspections. Every timestamp and geolocation painted a pattern too precise to be coincidental. Financial records were equally incriminating. Transfers to anonymous offshore accounts mirrored the exact sums found on the suspicious bank statement Arav had discovered days before his death. Some accounts were registered under shell companies, others encrypted through layers of digital laundering. Each transfer traced back to Anaya, confirming that she had been directing not only communications, but also the movement of funds in a calculated, deliberate manner. The investigators noted a recurring motif in Anaya's messages, a language of control and timing, as if orchestrating not just a relationship, but an entire sequence of events. Leela felt a chill reading phrases like, "Everything is aligned," and "he won't see it coming." The forensic team referenced these messages with the mansion's security system, confirming repeated remote access during nights when she was supposedly away. It was clear she had engineered every detail to avoid detection. Then came the audio files. Among the recovered data was a file that had been deliberately deleted. The voice was unmistakable, Anaya whispering in a measured tone, "It has to happen tonight." The words were loaded with intent, cold precision, and a terrifying finality. Leela replayed the clip multiple times, analyzing the background hum for clues. It was recorded within the mansion, likely in the study itself, adding an almost cinematic horror to the realization. The room fell silent as the weight of discovery settled over the team. Arav's golden life, so meticulously built over decades, had been undermined from within. The betrayal was not just emotional, but operational, financial, and logistical. Anaya had exploited trust, wielded secrecy like a weapon, and aligned her accomplice with precision timing. It was not passion alone that drove her. It was strategy. Leela's thoughts drifted to Leo Hart. The man had motive, opportunity, and the technical knowledge to execute complex schemes, but the strings were being pulled elsewhere. Anaya's fingerprints were not just figurative, they were literal, embedded in every digital and financial move traced by the team. Every deleted message, every encrypted transfer, every hotel booking converged into a single narrative, a conspiracy with deadly consequences. Yet, even as the evidence mounted, the investigators knew there was more. The pattern was intricate, almost theatrical. Anaya had anticipated scrutiny, leaving traces that could be uncovered only through painstaking forensic effort. Her manipulation of both the digital and physical environment revealed a calculated mind, one who could orchestrate events in ways that blurred the line between premeditation and execution. As night fell over the mansion once more, the weight of betrayal pressed down on the investigative team. The walls of the house, once symbols of prosperity and security, now seemed to close in, echoing the meticulous control Anaya had exercised over her surroundings. Leela felt a surge of urgency. Every file, every recovered fragment, every subtle digital anomaly was a step closer to uncovering the truth. But it was also a stark reminder of how dangerous the mastermind might be if she knew her secrets were being exposed. Then, among the deleted files, an audio note surfaced, so chilling and intimate it froze the room. The recording was unmistakable. Anaya's whisper carried across the file, "It has to happen tonight." Leela felt a shiver run down her spine. The evidence was no longer just circumstantial. It was a blueprint of the night Arav had died, and it left no room for doubt. Detective Leela Thompson and her team pored over mountains of financial records, the fluorescent lights of the investigation office reflecting off stacks of spreadsheets and printouts. The digital breadcrumbs uncovered from Anaya's accounts had already hinted at manipulation, but now the forensic accountant, Priya Desai, began to reveal the true scale of the betrayal. Arav's empire, A network of luxury construction projects and real estate had been quietly siphoned, piece by piece. Priya's findings were staggering. Large transfers had been made to accounts under the guise of legitimate business expenses, but cross-referencing revealed they were unauthorized. Millions had been funneled through layers of transactions, each designed to obscure the true destination. Some funds moved through offshore accounts, others through shell companies that bore Anaya's name, or names linked to entities she controlled indirectly. The depth of planning was shocking. The embezzlement was no impulsive act, but a calculated strategy to seize control. The team reconstructed the transaction timeline. Withdrawals coincided with periods when Arav was traveling, inspecting new sites, or engrossed in high-level meetings. Each move was deliberate, timed to avoid detection and create a veneer of normalcy. Leela realized with a growing sense of dread that the crime extended far beyond passion or revenge. It was a meticulously orchestrated economic coup, executed by someone with intimate knowledge of Arav's systems. Priya pointed to a particularly complex network of shell companies. These are all interconnected, and they funnel money back to the same offshore account, she explained, her finger tracing the intricate flow of capital. This isn't just hiding money, it's positioning her to take complete control of the empire. Every asset, every cash flow, eventually ends up under her authority. Leela's mind raced. Anaya's intelligence and patience were evident in every detail. She had used the guise of a loving wife to gain access to both personal and corporate finances, manipulating not only Arav's trust but the company's administrative processes. Each move had been executed with the precision of a chess master, anticipating potential obstacles and leaving few traces for investigators. As the investigation deepened, detectives began connecting the financial dots to Leo Hart, the former employee who had been caught in the embezzlement years earlier. His expertise in the company's accounting systems had made him a perfect accomplice. Surveillance and phone records revealed that he and Anaya had coordinated at multiple points, ensuring that the unauthorized transfers remained invisible until the meticulous digital excavation led by Priya. The picture became clearer. Anaya had orchestrated not only an affair, but also a full-scale corporate takeover, using Leo as her operative within Arav's empire. Each meeting, each encrypted message, and every carefully timed withdrawal contributed to a conspiracy that spanned months, if not years. The audacity of the plan left even seasoned detectives stunned. Arav had been blindsided not only emotionally but financially, a victim of betrayal so complete that it shook the foundations of everything he had built. The emotional weight of the discovery was almost unbearable. Leela thought of Arav, alone in his study, oblivious to the silent siphoning of his life's work. The realization that the woman he had trusted implicitly had manipulated both love and money for her gain added a layer of psychological horror to the already grim case. This was not just a murder. It was a strategic dismantling of a man's entire world. Late into the night, the forensic team compiled their report and prepared the evidence for the next step, apprehending Leo Hart. The former employee had been traced to a discreet apartment on the outskirts of the city, living under a false identity. Officers surrounded the location with precision, arresting him without incident. Inside, they found laptops, flash drives, and documentation linking him to the series of fraudulent transfers orchestrated with Anaya. In custody, Leo's demeanor shifted quickly from defensive to cooperative. Faced with overwhelming evidence, he began to speak, his voice tinged with resignation and fear. Every revelation pointed back to Anaya. She was not merely a participant, she was the mastermind. Every instruction, every maneuver, every calculated risk had originated from her. Leo confirmed that she had orchestrated the timing of transfers, the deletion of records, and the manipulation of the mansion's security system to cover their tracks. As Detective Thompson listened to Leo's confession, the weight of truth became undeniable. Anaya's role was not incidental. She had engineered the entire sequence of betrayal, from the affair to the financial subterfuge. The investigation now had a central figure, and her seemingly perfect facade was on the verge of shattering completely. The courthouse was packed, the air heavy with anticipation as the trial of Anaya Malhotra commenced. Journalists jostled for position, cameras flashing sporadically, while the jury sat in tense silence, notebooks and legal pads at the ready. Outside, onlookers murmured among themselves, speculating about the billionaire contractor's mysterious death and the shocking betrayal that had turned an empire into a crime scene. The trial was about to peel back layers of deceit, exposing secrets that would make the public question everything they thought they knew about wealth, power, and trust. Inside the courtroom, Anaya entered with her usual poise. Dressed in a tailored navy suit, her hair perfectly styled, she moved with an air of calculated elegance. Her expression remained icy, betraying none of the storm brewing around her. Even the most seasoned investigators found themselves unnerved by her calm composure. It was as if she already knew the script of the trial and the role she would play. Prosecutor Marcus Blake rose, his voice firm and commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, "what you will see over the course of this trial is the unraveling of a meticulously planned conspiracy. A betrayal so deliberate, so cold, it cost a man his life and nearly stole an entire empire." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "The evidence will show that Anaya Malhotra did not merely betray her husband emotionally. She orchestrated his demise while seizing control of his fortune. Digital evidence was presented first. Laptops, encrypted emails, deleted messages, and reconstructed phone logs were displayed on large monitors. The jury leaned forward as video snippets showed Anaya remotely accessing the mansion's security system, erasing footage, and coordinating with Leo Hart. Every detail aligned with the timeline of Arav's death, each bite of day, a digital breadcrumb pointing inexorably to her involvement. Forensic accountant Priya Desai testified next, methodically explaining the complex web of shell companies, offshore accounts, and unauthorized transfers that had quietly siphoned millions from Arav's empire. Graphs, flowcharts, and detailed reports highlighted the precision of the operation. Each slide elicited murmurs from the courtroom. Even the defense team found it difficult to counter the sheer scope of financial manipulation. Then came the hidden recordings. Audio recovered from encrypted devices captured whispered conversations between Anaya and Leo. Jurors grimaced as they heard Anaya giving instructions, her voice cold and controlled, coordinating transfers and planning precise actions. One clip, particularly chilling, included the words that had haunted Detective Thompson, "It has to happen tonight." The courtroom collectively shuddered at the evidence of forethought and calculated betrayal. Despite the mounting evidence, Anaya maintained her composure. She rarely blinked, her gaze unwavering as she listened to each piece of damning testimony. At times, she subtly adjusted her posture, letting her calm demeanor reinforce the perception of innocence. In her mind, every gesture, every glance was a calculated performance designed to protect the carefully constructed image she had cultivated for years. Prosecutors introduced financial statements showing transfers under her name, hotel reservations corresponding with late-night excursions, and phone records linking her directly to Leo Hart. Each revelation intensified the tension, the jury visibly recoiling at the scope of the conspiracy. Witnesses testified about suspicious behavior and the timeline of events, from deleted security footage to manipulated financial records, formed a coherent narrative of premeditated action. But just as the prosecution seemed to be gaining the upper hand, Anaya's defense attorney, Gregory Miles, rose. His sudden entrance into the narrative was dramatic, the courtroom sensing a shift in energy. He spoke with measured authority, commanding the attention of everyone present. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "we have all been presented with a compelling story, but like all stories, it is incomplete. There is a crucial piece of information that the prosecution has conveniently left out." He paused, letting the moment linger, the tension in the room palpable. The jurors leaned forward, curiosity piqued. Even the prosecutor's confident expression faltered for a fraction of a second. "Arav Malhotra," Gregory continued, "had a secret of his own. A secret that, if revealed, could change the context of every action taken by my client. Until the full truth is presented, we urge you to reserve judgment. What appears to be betrayal may in fact be a reaction to forces beyond our client's control. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The idea that Arav himself could have been hiding critical information sent a ripple of doubt through the jury and spectators alike. Phones clicked as reporters frantically typed notes, headlines forming before the story was even halfway told. Anaya's calm, controlled demeanor remained unchanged, but the subtle satisfaction in her eyes was unmistakable. She had introduced doubt at the precise moment, shifting the psychological balance of the trial. Detective Thompson felt a tightening in her chest. While the evidence was overwhelming, the defense's claim introduced a new layer of uncertainty. Could Arav's hidden secrets justify, or even explain, Anaya's actions? The complexity of human motives, of love twisted by greed and fear, suddenly seemed far murkier than anticipated. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as Gregory Miles announced that Arav's secret involved financial transactions, personal decisions, and relationships that had remained entirely hidden, even from his closest associates. The jury was left questioning everything, and the next phase of the trial promised revelations that would challenge not only the prosecution's narrative, but the very perception of truth itself. The courtroom atmosphere had become electric, charged with tension that felt almost suffocating. Every eye was fixed on the proceedings, every whisper amplified in the minds of those present. The trial of Anaya Malhotra had evolved into more than a legal battle. It was a psychological battlefield. Jurors, lawyers, and spectators alike were drawn into a maze of conflicting narratives, each one more chilling than the last. The prosecution's case, meticulously pieced together with digital records, financial statements, and surveillance footage, faced the first true test, the testimony of Leo Hart. Leo, the former employee who had played a pivotal role in the orchestration of Arav's demise, was escorted to the witness stand. His face, pale and tense, betrayed the gravity of the situation. He shifted uncomfortably in the chair, hands trembling slightly as he clutched the edge of the stand. The courtroom fell silent as the prosecuting attorney, Marcus Blake, began his questioning. "Mr. Hart," Blake's voice cut through the stillness, "you have been implicated in the unauthorized access to Mr. Malhotra's accounts and the events leading up to his death. Were you acting alone?" Leo hesitated, swallowing hard. "No, I wasn't alone." His eyes darted momentarily toward Anaya, who sat with her usual icy composure, and then returned to the attorney. "Everything was planned. Anaya directed it. She told me what to do, when to do it." The defense attorney, Gregory Miles, immediately intervened, his tone measured but sharp. "And Mr. Hart, did she promise you anything in return for your cooperation?" Leo's jaw tightened. His next words were almost a whisper, but they echoed across the courtroom. "Yes, she promised me immunity. She promised me a share of the fortune." The words landed like a thunderclap, reverberating through the jury box. The spectators gasped. Even some of the officers in the room exchanged uneasy glances. Prosecutor Blake leaned forward, voice rising slightly with intensity. "Mr. Hart, can you explain exactly what actions you took under her direction?" Leo's confession unfolded in a chilling sequence. He described how he had accessed Arav's study, bypassed security protocols, and deleted sensitive files from both the digital and physical safes. He spoke of late-night excursions, remote manipulation of the mansion's surveillance system, and the precise timing of financial transfers. Each detail underscored the meticulous planning involved, and the extent of Anaya's control over him. Gregory Miles seized the moment to shift focus, directing the conversation toward the psychological dynamic between Leo and Anaya. "Isn't it true," he asked pointedly, "that you acted out of fear and coercion? That MS Malhotra held leverage over you that left you with little choice?" Leo's eyes flickered, betraying inner conflict. He nodded slowly, then spoke with a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Yes, she threatened me, but I went along because she made me believe it was the only way to survive. She promised everything, and I believed her." The courtroom held its collective breath as the interaction between Anaya and Leo reached its most intense moment. Gregory pressed further, forcing Leo to recount the moments leading up to Arav's death. Each revelation painted Anaya as the central architect of the crime. orchestrating both the emotional manipulation and logistical execution with precision. The evidence of betrayal, greed, and premeditation became impossible to dismiss. Yet Anna's calm did not falter. She listened impassively, occasionally glancing at the jury with a measured smile that suggested confidence in her performance. Her eyes, though unreadable, reflected the psychological battle being waged. She was a master manipulator, unflinching even under the weight of incriminating testimony. The prosecution then shifted focus to corroborate Leo's testimony. Forensic analysts presented additional findings from the mansion: deleted access logs, remote manipulations of the security system, and evidence of digital footprints confirming that Anaya had directed Leo at every step. Every piece of data reinforced the narrative Leo had provided, creating a layered portrait of calculated orchestration and complicity. As the day wore on, the courtroom became a study in tension and human psychology. The jury was drawn into the emotional and intellectual complexity of the case, forced to reconcile the overwhelming evidence with Anaya's composed, seemingly untouchable demeanor. Spectators whispered, reporters furiously typed notes, and even the seasoned legal teams recognized the extraordinary nature of the trial. Just as the prosecution prepared to rest for the day, an urgent envelope was delivered to Detective Thompson. It contained a new forensic report, one that highlighted a minute but critical anomaly in the timeline of our Av's last night alive, a detail so significant that it threatened to change the entire direction of the case. The courtroom waited, unaware that the balance of truth was about to shift once again. The courtroom was charged with tension as the final day of the trial began. The air felt heavier than ever, each breath weighed down by months of mounting evidence, testimony, and revelations. Jurors exchanged uneasy glances, reporters hunched over laptops, and spectators sat silently, sensing that the end of a saga was near. Detective Leela Thompson observed from the back, mentally preparing for the moment when justice would finally crystallize, yet aware that surprises still lingered in the shadows of Arav's empire. The prosecution opened the day by presenting the latest forensic report, the one that had caused ripples the previous afternoon. Analysts explained in meticulous detail how timestamps from deleted security logs, digital footprints, and financial transactions combined to construct an exact timeline of the night Arav had died. Each step was synchronized with precision. The remote access of the mansion's security system, the coordination between Anaya and Leo Hart, and the precise manipulation of financial transfers to obscure motive and opportunity. The meticulous orchestration left little room for doubt. The murder had been planned with chilling accuracy. The jury absorbed every detail, leaning forward as investigators demonstrated how each element fit seamlessly into the premeditated plan. The video evidence of Anaya remotely deleting footage, the encrypted messages to Leo Hart, and the hidden bank transfers all converged into a single, irrefutable narrative. Even her calm demeanor in the courtroom could not disguise the cold calculus behind her actions. When the prosecution concluded, the gallery remained silent, the gravity of the evidence pressing down on everyone present. For the first time, Anaya's mask began to crack. Her usual poise faltered for a brief moment as subtle tension crossed her face. A flicker of unease betrayed by the tightening of her jaw and a brief narrowing of her eyes. For months, she had orchestrated every detail with meticulous care. Now, the very system she had manipulated for her advantage was exposing her. Defense attorney Gregory Miles attempted one final intervention, questioning minor inconsistencies and highlighting Arav's secrets hinted at during previous testimony. Yet the weight of digital forensics, financial analysis, and Leo Hart's confession proved too overwhelming. Each attempt to divert attention only reinforced the prosecution's argument. Anaya had leveraged manipulation, deceit, and cold calculation to destroy the man she once claimed to love. The judge's gavel fell, calling for the jury to deliberate. Hours passed as the 12 jurors retreated to the deliberation room, their silence only punctuated by the clicking of pens and the rustling of paper. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. Every spectator, every officer, every member of the press waited with bated breath for the outcome. The empire that Arav had spent decades building hung in the balance, its legacy threatened by greed, betrayal, and manipulation. When the jury returned, the foreperson rose slowly. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Anaya Malhotra, guilty on all charges, including first-degree murder, conspiracy, and financial fraud." The words resonated through the courtroom, a mixture of shock, relief, and vindication rippling among those present. The crowd gasped, reporters scribbled furiously, and Anaya's eyes widened, the composure she had maintained for so long finally cracking. Her breathing grew uneven, and a faint tremor betrayed the collapse of the persona she had projected for months. Detective Thompson felt a wave of grim satisfaction. Justice had been served, yet the human cost was undeniable. Arav's empire, once a symbol of innovation and power, now lay in ruins, splintered by betrayal and greed. Buildings that had once gleamed with promise now symbolized a legacy tainted by deceit. Employees, investors, and friends were left to navigate the fallout, struggling to reconcile admiration for Arav's achievements with the horror of the circumstances surrounding his death. The courtroom slowly emptied, but the echoes of the trial lingered. Leela returned to Arav's mansion to oversee the final stages of evidence processing. As she reviewed his laptop one last time, a subtle alert caught her attention. A recently discovered encrypted file, hidden deep within the system. Its contents were unknown, and its timestamp suggested it had been created after many of the events investigators had already pieced together. The possibilities were endless. Was it a final clue left by Arav himself, or another layer of deception planted by Anaya to complicate the case even further? The discovery suggested that, despite the verdict, the story of Arav Malhotra's empire might not be complete. Every investigation, every confession, and every courtroom revelation had led to closure. Yet the encrypted file hinted at a hidden truth still waiting to surface. As Leela stared at the glowing screen, the weight of the case pressed heavily on her. The empire had fallen. Anaya had been brought to justice. But the shadows surrounding Arav's life and death were not fully dissipated. One final secret, locked away in a digital vault, remained, a reminder that in a world of wealth, betrayal, and ambition, closure was often only the beginning of another story. Detective Thompson saved the encrypted file to a secure drive, her mind racing. Whoever, or whatever, was behind its creation could change everything the investigators thought they knew. The empire was fallen, but the story was far from over.